I'm here with AVRL. We're in the slowest part of the postseason, seemingly. Not much roster use coming out anymore, like maybe some confirmations rather. And it's been quiet. We're sort of going into the Christmas season. And I thought it was a good time to just like catch up. What's up with you? You had an exciting year. And it was also maybe the year of AVRL in some senses, even though maybe you feel different about it. But essentially, for a long time, I think a lot of people had you as one of the guys that should be casting Overwatch League from the contenders region. It felt like you were sort of snubbed in season 3, if I may say so.
I just wanted to get Rookie of the Year this year. That's all I wanted. I was like, can I be in contention for this award or not? But it was a good year. It was a good year. And yeah, I mean, I don't think I ever got snubbed. To be fair, I got given an Overwatch League opportunity last year in 2020 as well. So I mean, this conversation and this kind of entry, or for me, I guess technically speaking, would be a re-entry into the Overwatch League in a more official, lengthy capacity than a one-off, was already in the works, a little bit overdue, but I didn't feel like I ever got snubbed, to put it that way. So no harm, no foul from the league side. They've been nothing but good to me. And to be honest, it was always about timing and space and availability. You can only have so much talent on your broadcast team. Like it's not an open bar there. You're not gonna have like 20 broadcast talent. And Overwatch League, if you actually look across esports in leagues and the broadcasts teams are, I wouldn't say lean, but they're definitely pretty straightforward, and they don't have too much fat to cut off. Like they typically have like 3 casting duos, a desk with some rotating analysts, maybe an interviewer and a host, and that's about it. Overwatch League has like 5 duos this year. They had 5 duos in 2021. I believe the same in 2020 as well. So I did not expect, and I don't think anyone should have expected that there would have been an expansion to 6 or 7 duos. If anything, people were maybe concerned that they would go down from 5 to 4. Like that was always a possibility. And so, timing was really important there. I probably only really got my big opportunity because of the opening next to Achillios that sort of happened. So if it wasn't for that, who knows? But I'm happy to be here and happy I've done a pretty good year.
Right. Do you remember what it was like to finally get that offer? And maybe also, what was the more emotional moment? Like finally putting ink to paper, or like having been given the offer?
Well, okay. A few things. I'll talk about the reaction first, which is that I don't know if anyone watched or remembered the tweet that I put out when I basically announced that I was heading in. Basically, all the casters, all the talent did our own announcements, and Blizzard did like this big announcement for everybody. And we were sort of encouraged to do our own like content style, whatever style we wanted. And mine was basically like when you play Overwatch ranked and you rank up from one rank to the other one, from plat to diamond or whatever. And I did that, but I used the contenders logo, and it like boom, it changed the Overwatch League logo, like promotion, rank up. And the whole thing was basically like, I'm just sitting there tired, exhausted, like, wow, finally. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear in this interview, but like, effing finally, like, and then I looked at the camera like real deadpan, because that's kind of how I felt. I was like, dude, I've grinded and grinded and grinded. And it's just like, to finally get that payoff was, I didn't cry. I didn't like have any huge emotions. It was more just like a weight lifted off my shoulders that had been there for a long time. And that's basically it. So yeah, there's like no, I don't think there was no entitlement to it. Like I didn't feel like I was entitled to it, but I'm glad I got it, and I'm glad that the hard work paid off. And I actually had like, I don't know, like somehow everyone knew about it before I even knew about it, because I was talking to some of the other talent, and I had other talent hit me up. I was like, hey man, so what's going on with you in the league next year? I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, apparently everyone else knew that I was about to have an offer, and I was the last person that knew. Then finally my agent gave me that call that people in show business always talk about, like, oh yeah, and then I did the audition and didn't expect to get the role. Then 2 months later my agent called me. He's like, you got the role, and I'm like, cool. So I had that kind of call as well, and that was a very, very cool call to have, obviously. So it was lots of fun.
Now, of course, as you said, casters come in pairs. How do you remember the process? How it was decided that you're going to pair up with Achillios and like become this sort of like AP casting duo? Because theoretically speaking, I mean, you could have also casted NA theoretically as an English caster, right?
Well, yeah, but like time zone wise, it makes way more sense for me to do APAC. Seth and I are both actually living in the APAC time zone. So it's like kind of peak hours for us. Like instead of if you were based in NA, you'd be waking up or rather not going to bed, you know. And the same would be true if I was doing an NA broadcast. I'd be doing like mega early in the morning for me, which is not impossible. Like I would have done it still, but it obviously made a lot more sense to do APAC. And as far as how the duos and pairings worked, like I said, there was an opening next to Achillios. I mean, the league was they already had their eyes on me from even a year back, like I said. And Achillios had also specifically kind of mentioned to the league that he'd like to cast with me in his duo specifically. And that kind of got married up together, and everyone's pretty happy about it. And I got asked if I'd be interested in pairing up with Achillios. That was part of the offer when it got given to me, and obviously I was like, I mean, that sounds fantastic to me. So, pretty easy stuff. No complaints there.
Do you think you would have natural synergy with any other of the casting crew?
Yeah, I mean, I like everybody there. I had done one sort of third-party Valorant event on the side with Mitch with Uber early this year, like January. So we had done like one cast together. Fun fact, people don't know about this, but one of the very, very earliest Overwatch casts, I'm talking like late 2016, maybe early 2017, from Bren, was him doing with me. We actually did a cast together like way back in the day, like early Overwatch release, and it's pretty scuffed. The VOD is still up there somewhere. It's a pretty scuffed VOD, and I don't like to look at it. I like to forget that it exists, but that is there. So I had actually worked with Bren at least one time in the past. And you know, otherwise, I got a good history with Jaws. We went to Gauntlet together. Achillios was there as well. And ZP was also a contenders caster who I was familiar with, so it probably didn't really matter. And you know, whoever I cast with, even if it like, you know, Doe was coming back as well. He was traditionally a play-by-play. He was also my mentor in casting for several years, so that would have been really fun if I got to cast with him. Kind of like the student gets to work with the teacher kind of deal. So you know, it would have been fine with anybody, but I think Achillios and I ended up being a very strong pairing, and that was a good result.
That's interesting. How did the mentorship relationship work there?
Oh, it's just like back in 2017, going into 2018 into the Overwatch League. Obviously, Monty Doa, pretty big names, very experienced, super professional, been in the game for a long time. I'm more of an up-and-comer in 2016, 2017. I'd only ever taken one professional gig in casting in 2016 at that point, so I was still, I wouldn't say fresh, but I was still figuring stuff out and stabbing in the dark a lot. And so I met Doa in the 2017 Overwatch World Cup when I went to Santa Monica with Team New Zealand, and I had a conversation with Monty and Doa there, and mentioned that I was a caster. They actually, I don't know if they already knew, or I can't remember what the process was, but like, yeah, we had a chat about it, and they mentioned to keep in touch, and so I did. And you know, fast forward, you know, every now and then we would probably have a chat, or I'd ask him questions, and sometimes send him a VOD as well to see what he thought, get some good feedback, just stuff like that, really. So it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't a job for anybody. It was just like, it was just a line of contact, really.
Sure. Now, of course, I mean, you like joined the Overwatch League at a pretty inopportune time in terms of just what was happening globally. Can you reveal a little bit how the magic is done from your side? Like, what's your studio setup like? What were you hooked up with? Like, how does production work over oceans, basically?
Yeah, the league sends you like several cases. I'm talking, I don't know, like 100 kilos plus worth of gear, with cameras, lighting equipment. There's even a dedicated computer just with all the stuff that you need on it. And then you know, you go through its own connections and its own programs on there. We do all the stuff through there. Basically, everyone gets the same kit so that the engineers and technicians can sort of go into your computer remotely and fix problems or troubleshoot. And it's easy to troubleshoot when everyone's using the same gear, right? So that's basically it. It's not super complicated. We just all get given the same standard gear that looks pretty decent. Green screen setups, of course, as well. The green screen stuff is all done on their end as far as the engineering side of making us look like, or at least somewhat presentable in a virtual studio. And then from the casting side, we try and sell the look a little bit more by Seth and I did very small things. For example, we looked at each other as if we were standing next to each other. I just stare at my wall, he stares at his wall, presumably, and we pretend we're looking at each other. It just kind of does just small things to sell the look of a virtual set as if we were actually there. And I think the end product on broadcast looked pretty reasonable. Yeah, looked good.
That basically means that you're your own like troubleshooter if any technical issues come up, right? Maybe you're even your own makeup artist. I do my own makeup. I got sent a makeup kit and some maybe I can call them lessons, I guess, in how to do makeup for broadcast. And I mean, I didn't do any troubleshooting really. It's if I had any questions, I'd ask the engineers because we all got given the same gear, right? And they would remote in to the computer and fix any problems software wise. So I would only have to do something if there was a hardware issue, but I didn't have any hardware issues, thankfully, so it's fine. Right. Now, I mean, the range that you have as a caster is pretty impressive in terms of not just in Overwatch, where you've casted like several different levels, of course, from contenders to like Overwatch League, continue to do so. Also there, I would say there are different levels to the contender scenes. And then also different esports now, right? Like branching out in that regard. I always found like by contrast, one learns more about the things one is engaged in. So are there any things that through those experiences that you found out, like maybe that improved your casting or gave you an informed view of those scenes?
Well, I mean, Overwatch wasn't even my first game. I'd gone through a few games even before landing in Overwatch, and that was true for a lot of people coming in. And most casters that are doing similar things to me are also multi-game casters, unless you're super lockdown exclusive. But you know that has its own perks as well, and you would choose to do that. But yeah, I mean, I guess there's a lot of lessons to be learned, just how different games kind of operate. Having the kind of knowledge of how other games work, it kind of helps you every new title you get into. Also makes you appreciate some titles as well, and lets you sort of find the nuance and details and what works under the esports to kind of build your repertoire. Kind of building your toolkit and taking different lessons from each game you do and bring it together. That's been pretty powerful. Most people probably don't quote unquote make it in their first game or their first esport. At least that's rare. Unless you're like someone that came in from League of Legends, and League of Legends is like a 10-year game anyway, and you've only done that and you're specialized in it. That's got a pretty good pathway. But for most people outside of that, you've probably worked in a few games before you got into the one you really wanted to. If you were like some dedicated caster anyway, obviously if you were a professional player turned into a broadcast talent, then you've probably that's the only game you've ever done because you got into broadcast talent from the game you're doing. So that's a different story. But yeah, taking a lot of lessons from every game I've done has definitely made me a better caster, and I think makes most people better casters.
Now, of course, we sort of like started out describing the grind and the struggle getting into these tier 1 positions. Does it feel like arriving somewhere and then things transform and it's suddenly easier, or is it still a struggle?
I mean, it's like a yes and no kind of thing there. I think people took me a lot more seriously when I got into the Overwatch League, even though, like, for me, my ability did not change, or at least it didn't feel like it changed much. My casting quality in the league is like the same as my casting quality when it was out of the league. And I'd set a pretty high bar for myself in terms of my broadcast quality that I want to bring to the table. The only thing that changed was the reputation in terms of, having that kind of title, that kind of label, like, boom, done Overwatch League. You put that on your resume, and people look at you a little bit differently and they treat you a little bit differently. But even then, yeah, I don't know, like moving into another title, I guess it would. I guess for a lot of people, it does hold more weight to help you get into a position. I mean, the ideal place to be is that you're like a high enough tier 1 talent that you suddenly become someone that can be shoot into new esports or to move across titles or to be moving into positions, because there's some real heavy hitters out there in the industry as far as talent goes that are definitely, you know, can get to the top of the list. And if a new game comes out or a broadcast needs new people, you wouldn't need to, no one asks a question like, oh, is this person good enough? It's just, you just assume they are because they've done X, Y, and Z. They've done things to a very high level, and you've probably seen their work before. Whereas people probably didn't really see my work before Overwatch League. You know, probably a lot of people, I have to imagine, had only really encountered or discovered me through the Overwatch League. So, I mean, it's a pretty big difference as far as audience size goes, and you know, that's a pretty big shift.
Do you have like one caster that you look up to where you thinking, okay, this guy has it all figured out, like technique is amazing, like reading crowds is amazing, game knowledge? Is there this one guy?
There's a few of them, actually. I think most casters that are experienced could probably name a few people that they'd been inspired by or that they look to as some of they believe has kind of reached the peak of ability in terms of what they'd like to achieve. For me, over time, it's been a few different people. There's been Papa Smithy, who also came from the Oceanic scene as well. He did League of Legends. He moved over to LCK in Korea. Eventually, casted the World's Finals as a color caster for League of Legends, and I believe it was 2017 or 18. I believe it might have been 2018. I think it was. So, and then now he's, I believe, the general manager of 100 Thieves for the League of Legends team. Someone I also met in Korea when I was at Gauntlet. And some of that to me was like at the very peak of color casting. Another person is obviously Henry G. Most people know him as one of the top commentators in the world. Someone who is just, again, at that peak, done all the big events, super experienced, very knowledgeable in their title, well-spoken, and just knows how to read a game properly, how to play with the crowd, and how to write storylines and you know, speak the narratives required for good storytelling. And then another League of Legends person, probably Deficio back in the day as well, when he was very active before he moved over to more of a management position. I think with Astralis, he was another person that I was looked up to. But yeah, those would be my probably top 3. But there's a lot of great people, and then people not even in my role. I think, you know, Uber's fantastic as someone I look up to as a friend and a colleague.
And that concludes our first part of the interview with AVRL. In the second part, we talked about what kind of players he enjoys watching and might have a slight bias towards. We talk about underrated players and teams in Season 4. We also talk about the best main tank of Season 4, and to a lesser extent of Overwatch 1. Might not see coming where that is going. And we talk about the challenges with Overwatch 1 and casting for a game that is not even released yet. If you want to be notified when that comes out, hit like, subscribe, and then bell notification to stay tuned to all things Overwatch esports with GGRecon.